They said we were finished, that Earth was done. The war had dragged on for 17 years, and we were out of bodies, bullets, and hope. The sky hadn't been blue in a decade. Everything was dust, ash, or ruins. The enemy, the Tharkai, were relentless. They weren't machines or flesh, they were both. Something in between, like a nightmare born from science and madness. And they were winning. The global defense networks had collapsed one by one. Nations stopped existing. Borders meant nothing. All that was left was a broken alliance of surviving humans clinging to underground bunkers, shattered outposts, and orbital wrecks barely holding together. I was stationed at Outpost Remnant 9, somewhere beneath what used to be the Alps. We hadn't seen sunlight in 2 years, not since the Tharkai stormed the upper levels and melted the mountain down to its bones. Half of my squad was either dead or breathing through tubes. And I was trying to remember what hope even felt like. That's when Commander Thorne summoned me. She didn't ask. She didn't give orders the usual way anymore. There wasn't anyone left to bark at. Just quiet glances and heavy silences. "Sit," she said when I entered her dim command room. Her hand shook as she poured what might have been coffee or some synthetic substitute. I didn't ask. It tasted like burned regret either way. "We're pulling the plug," she told me. "One final option. You're going to help us call them." I frowned. "Them?" She didn't speak for a moment, just stared at the old terminal on the table, a rusted relic from the pre-fall era. Her eyes looked older than time itself. "The Ancients," I laughed. Thought she was joking. Nobody talked about that program anymore, Project Hollowstar, a myth they used to scare rookies. "You mean the Sleepers?" I asked, already regretting it. She nodded slowly. "They weren't real," I said. "They were. Warnings. Prototypes. Forbidden tech. Even if they existed, no one's seen them since the collapse." She leaned in, her voice hoarse and low. "They're buried under the ice in New Siberia. Coordinates came through a week ago from a probe we lost contact with decades ago. No explanation. Just a signal. One of them woke up." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. She slid a file across the desk, real paper, not digital. Ink, old school. Inside were images, not just satellite scans, but symbols, heat maps, and ancient glyphs no one had used since the first days of human space travel. Whatever had been buried there, it wasn't asleep anymore. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "You're the only surviving linguist with clearance high enough to read these," she said, "and your brain's still mostly intact." Mostly. A generous word. I'd lost plenty memories, feelings, even colors. But the language centers in my mind, still sharp, still dangerous. "You're going north," she said. "Taking a team. Dig them out. Wake them up. And pray they're still on our side. And if they're not," she smiled a bitter, empty thing, "then at least the Tharkai won't be the ones to end us." 3 days later, we launched in silence. The dropship was old. Patchwork tech with more duct tape than engineering. My team was a mess. A quiet engineer with burnt hands and haunted eyes. A weapons specialist who never blinked. And someone I didn't recognize, masked. Silent. Eyes like glass. No names. Just code names. That's all we had left. The cold hit like a curse the moment we landed. Ice stretched beyond the horizon. Unbroken. Untouched. No sound. No life, just the wind whispering secrets no one should hear. We found the site buried under 30 meters of frozen rock. The entrance wasn't natural. It was carved. Old stonework, runes glowing faintly with energy we couldn't explain. The deeper we went, the stranger it got. And then we saw it, the vault. A massive circular door, taller than a skyscraper, humming softly. Lights blinked on as we approached. Symbols rearranged themselves. It recognized us. I reached out without thinking. My fingers touched the surface, and the door began to open. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not words, not sound. It was inside our heads, cold, ancient, and very awake. You have called upon us. Humanity returns to its broken roots. My breath caught. The others stepped back. Behind the door, something moved, and I realized too late. They weren't sleeping. They were waiting. The vault groaned as the door slowly slid open. The sound not mechanical but organic, like the exhale of some colossal creature that had been holding its breath for a millennium. Behind it was darkness. Not just the absence of light, but a thickness, like the dark had mass. It pushed at our minds before it ever touched our skin. The weapons specialist, who went by Nox, raised her rifle instinctively, the barrel quivering slightly. The silent one, code-named Talon, didn't move, just stared into the black like he recognized it. "Power signatures are fluctuating," said Nira, the engineer, eyes flicking over her wrist monitor. "Something's alive in there. Something old." No one replied. We didn't need to. It felt alive. The air had weight now. It tasted metallic, sour. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to seal the vault back up, bury it again, and pretend we never found it. But we had no choice. Earth had no choice. The first step in was like breaking the surface of deep water. I could breathe, but not fully. The lights on our suits flickered not from interference, but hesitation, like the tech itself didn't want to work here. As we moved forward, lights bloomed on the walls around us. Not electric, something else. Symbols pulsed to life, ancient and strange, forming patterns I'd only seen in theoretical archives. And yet, I understood them. "Language is adapting," I muttered. "It's alive. Or reactive." "What's it saying?" Nox asked. I didn't answer. I was too focused, too absorbed in what I was reading. The symbols weren't words in a traditional sense. They were memories, compressed into pulses, flashes of collective thought. Not just language intention. They called themselves the Hollow, I said softly. Nira glanced at me. "That's what this place is? Hollow Star?" I nodded slowly. No, the name wasn't a code. It was literal. These beings, the ancients, they emptied themselves of mortality, hollowed their flesh, became something else. Talon finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. They made themselves into weapons. He wasn't guessing. He knew. How? We pressed deeper into the vault. The walls curved inward, spiraling downward into the earth like a corkscrew. Along the way, we passed statues, or so we thought, until Nira stopped cold and scanned one. "Not stone," she said. "Organic matter, petrified. These were people. Humans, maybe." I looked closer. They were twisted, locked in poses of agony, mouths wide open, eyes frozen in terror. But it wasn't fear of death I saw in those faces. It was worship. A door waited at the base of the spiral octagonal, smooth, glowing from the center with a quiet pulse, like a heartbeat. Talon stepped forward and laid his hand against it. It opened without resistance. Beyond was a chamber unlike anything I've seen, not a room, but a womb. Fluid shimmered in the air, suspended by no gravity, no walls. In the center floated a figure, tall, thin, inhuman, yet strangely familiar. Its body was wrapped in armor that looked grown, not built. Runes crawled across its chest and limbs, glowing softly. It was in stasis, arms folded across its chest, head tilted downward, and it was watching us. I don't mean metaphorically. It didn't move, not even an eyelid, but it was aware. Present. Its mind pressed against mine like a tide against a shore. Nira whispered, "Is that one of them?" "It's a Primarch," I said, though I had no idea how I knew. The knowledge wasn't mine. It was fed into me. "Only 5 were made," I said. "The original Hollow. Each one housed the memory of an entire fallen civilization. They were created when humanity faced extinction, long before the Tharkai." "Before?" Nox echoed. "You mean this war has happened before?" "No," I said. "Something worse." Talon turned to me, eyes dark. "Can we wake it?" Nira frowned. What if it's hostile? Nox raised her rifle again. What if it's worse than the Tharkai? I looked at the Primarch. At the stillness that wasn't sleep. At the armor that pulsed like living flesh. I didn't know if it would save us. But I knew this. We'd already lost everything. What else was there to risk? I stepped closer and spoke the words that rose unbidden in my throat. Not English, not any earth tongue, but a forgotten dialect of something older. The language of the Hollow. Rise, keeper of what was lost. We summon your wrath, not your mercy. The chamber went still. Then the world shook. The fluid in the air vaporized. The glow became blinding. And the Primarch opened its eyes. They were not human eyes. They were stars burning, ancient, filled with memories of pain, war, and endless death. We all fell back as its arms unfolded, its body rising without effort. A voice filled the chamber. Not sound. Thought. You wake me in failure. You wake me in defeat. Have you no shame, broken children? Nox raised her gun. It's hostile. Don't! I shouted, grabbing her arm. The Primarch's gaze turned to her. She froze mid-breath. Not dead. Just still. Like time paused for her. I was forged for war eternal, not mercy. You come crawling to the past when you have squandered the future. I stepped forward. My legs shook. My soul shook. We didn't come for forgiveness, I said aloud. We came because there is no one else left to fight. We came because humanity is dying again. The Primarch tilted its head. You are not the first to say this. You will not be the last. I swallowed. We need your help. The silence that followed stretched for too long. Then, a flicker of what could only be described as amusement passed through its voice. Very well. Nox gasped and collapsed to the floor, breathing hard. Time resumed. One of you carries the seed. Nira blinked. The what? The Primarch moved for the first time, stepping onto the chamber floor like gravity returned to serve it. To awaken the others, I need a vessel. One mind strong enough to carry the chain of command. One who can hear the voices and not go mad. It turned its gaze to Talon, and Talon stepped forward willingly. No, I said, trying to stop him. We don't even know what that means. It means I've known this day would come since I was a child, he said, voice calm. What are you talking about? He removed his helmet. His eyes weren't human. Not fully. Not anymore. I was born from the Hollow Project, he said. A contingency buried within Earth's own bloodline. I wasn't just selected, I was bred. The Primarch placed a hand on his head. Talon convulsed, not in pain, but like a transmission had begun. Lights flickered across his skin, across his veins. Something passed into him. And when he opened his eyes again, they shone like stars. 4 more lie beneath the ice, the sand, the ash, and the sea, the Primarch said. We will wake them. We will make war, and your enemies will weep blood in the dirt. We left the vault with more than we came for. The Primarch walked among us now, hidden beneath cloaking systems we couldn't understand. The skies crackled with unnatural energy as we flew back. The world was watching. Something had changed. As we re-entered Earth's comm grid, every channel lit up with the same signal. Holostar online. Defense systems sinking. Humanity's blade reforged. Commander Thorne's voice came through next, unfiltered. What the hell did you wake up out there? I looked at Talon, or what he had become, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel helpless. I felt terrified, because the war wasn't over. It was just beginning again. The world changed after we brought the first one back. They called him the Warden, a name etched into ancient subspace transmissions we'd only just begun to decode. He didn't speak much after Talon took in the seed, but he moved, and where he moved, the enemy died. The Tharkai ships in orbit began to fall without warning. Black streaks rained down from the sky as someone sliced through them mid-flight. No human technology could move like that, not in the vacuum of space, not with that kind of precision, and it was only the beginning. The Warden gave us coordinates. 4 sets. The second was buried deep beneath what used to be northern Africa, the endless sands of the Saharan collapse zone. Since the climate breakdown, it hadn't been a desert anymore, but a toxic wasteland of acidic dunes and black storms that tore flesh from bone. No one went there, not even the Tharkai. And now, that's where we were headed. The dropship hummed as it cruised low over the shifting terrain. Heat shimmered around us, but the skies were darker than they should have been. Clouds moved like smoke, fast, low, thick with static. I sat across from Talon. Or maybe I should have stopped calling him that. He wasn't just the soldier I'd met at Remnant 9 anymore. His eyes didn't blink. His veins pulsed with faint, silver lines. And sometimes, when no one was looking, his mouth moved like he was speaking to someone I couldn't hear. Nira sat beside me, silent, chewing her lower lip. She hadn't spoken much since the vault. I think she was scared of what we'd done. We all were. Nox checked her rifle for the 5th time, still jumpy, still ready to shoot whatever blinked wrong. She didn't trust Talon now. Not really. None of us did. But we followed him anyway. We didn't have a choice. "Drop zone in 2 minutes," said the pilot over comms. "Storm activity off the charts. Not Tharkai, something else." I looked out the viewport. The sands moved like liquid, shaped by wind patterns that didn't make sense. In the distance, a structure jutted out of the ground, obsidian, black, smooth, and angled unnaturally, like a knife stabbed into the earth. Talon's voice came over the channel. "Activate suits. Keep weapons on low charge. The second one is unstable." "Unstable?" Nox asked. "She wasn't meant to sleep this long," he replied. The ship dropped with a hard jolt. We hit sand and heat instantly. The air shimmered. Lightning danced through the clouds above, horizontal and green. My boots sank slightly into the toxic terrain as I stepped down. The structure loomed ahead. Closer now, I could see it wasn't just stabbed into the earth, it was growing from it. Veins of black material pulsed faintly with energy, spreading out into the sand like roots. The entrance had no door, just an opening that exhaled heat and static. As we stepped inside, I felt it again. Pressure. Like the air itself was sentient. We descended quickly, following Talon's lead. The warden didn't come with us this time. Said it was not his place, whatever that meant. The deeper we went, the louder it became, a constant hum, like machinery trying to wake itself from a 1,000-year coma. The walls pulsed with strange light, flashing symbols that hurt my eyes if I looked too long. "She's below," Talon said, "and she's dreaming of war." The chamber was different than the last. Less clean, less designed. It was angry. The structure had warped, melted, fused with the surrounding earth. Black vines of unknown material coiled along the walls. Something had gone wrong here, and in the center of it all was her. Suspended in midair, the second hollow. Unlike the warden, this one looked half wild. Her armor was scorched, cracked, and covered in what looked like burn marks. One arm was missing. Her faceplate was shattered on one side, revealing skin that shimmered like glass under firelight. But her presence, it hit like a scream. Nira dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Nox staggered backward. Even Talon grimaced. "Her name was the Red Sigil," Talon muttered. "Tactical command. Rageborn. She led the charge when the moons fell. She is unchained." I stepped forward, and the light flared violently. The temperature spiked. My skin prickled. "Wait!" Nox shouted. "We don't even know if she's still sane." "I don't think sanity was ever part of her programming," I said. I reached out again. The words came unbidden, ancient, crawling up my throat. "We summon the flame that devours stars. Wake, Sigil. War calls." The air exploded. I was thrown backward, slammed against a wall. Sparks flew from my suit. Everything went white, and then stillness. When my vision returned, she was standing. Her one good eye blazed with crimson light. Her missing arm had reformed not as flesh, but as a weapon, a blade, fluid metal shaped by thought. The red sigil looked around, and the hum turned into a scream. The chamber roared with energy. Nira vomited. Nox raised her gun but couldn't keep it steady. Talon stepped forward. Sigil, your command is re-established. War State Protocol Alpha 3. Do you acknowledge? She tilted her head. And for a moment, I thought she might strike him down. Then she laughed. Not a human laugh. A sound like steel being torn apart. It echoed in our skulls. You are small, but you carry the seed, so you are mine. She looked at me. And you, little echo, you speak with a tongue that should be ash. Interesting. I swallowed hard. We need your help. Earth is dying. She stepped closer. Everything dies, but death can be useful. Show me a battlefield, and I will paint it with the bones of your enemies. I exhaled slowly. We'll give you more than one. Extraction was chaos. The moment she stepped out of the structure, the sands reacted. Storms rose. The air screamed. A Tharkai destroyer dropped out of the sky, a massive ship, 6 miles long, with tentacle-like engines and plasma cannons that had torn through Earth's orbital defenses. It fired once. The red sigil caught the beam mid-air, caught it, and twisted it like a ribbon. She hurled it back at the destroyer. The ship exploded, not with fire but with reversal. Space bent inside out. A scream echoed across the sky, not from the ship but from the fabric of reality itself. Nira watched, shaking. She's not a weapon, she whispered. She's a catastrophe. We returned to Remnant 9 to a hero's welcome, if you could call it that. Survivors cheered. Commanders wept. The Warden and Sigil stood side by side, barely tolerating each other. They weren't comrades. They were gods with a temporary truce, and Earth still burned. The Tharkai had noticed. Their silence ended. New ships arrived. Bigger, smarter. They didn't attack recklessly now. They observed. They studied our moves. And we knew what they were waiting for. A counterstrike. A final move. The next coordinates were under sea. Deep, far below the Mariana ruins. Talon said the third hollow was known as the Drowned Queen. Underwater deployment? Nox muttered. That's suicide. Not if she wakes, Talon said. And if she doesn't? Then Earth floods, and we drown before the Tharkai do it for us. I looked at him. The stars in his eyes shimmered. He didn't blink anymore. Suit up, I said. We go at dawn, because the war wasn't over, and neither were we. We launched before dawn. The skies over what was left of the Pacific were black, swirling with angry clouds that refused to move. Storms clashed overhead, lightning bolts striking water every few seconds like the ocean was being interrogated by the heavens. Below us was the drop zone, what used to be the Mariana Trench, before the tectonic shifts shattered it wide open. Now it was known as the Mariana Wound, an endless chasm that bled methane and pressure so intense, even the Tharkai hadn't fully explored it, which made it the perfect grave for something ancient. The hollow's third coordinate pulsed below the surface, deeper than any human had willingly gone. Not even drones survived more than a few hours down there, crushed, scrambled, or lost without a trace. And yet, here we were. Our submersible was a monstrous piece of engineering, patched together with scavenged alien alloys and holotech gifted by the Warden. It had no name, just a designation. Orca 0. It looked like a bullet wrapped in armor. With engines that didn't hum, they growled. Nox hated the ocean. She kept checking her air supply like she expected it to betray her. Nira barely spoke, her eyes glued to the pressure readouts, lips moving like she was praying to gods we had long forgotten. Talon was quiet, not in a passive way. His silence had become ritual. He sat with his eyes closed, hands folded, as if communing with things we couldn't see. And I just watched the dark water rise around us as the submersible descended. We dropped fast. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The moment the last thread of light vanished from the viewport, the temperature inside the sub dropped despite the heaters. The dark was not empty. It was watching. By the time we hit 30,000 feet, strange things began happening. Lights flickered. Static crawled over our helmets. The ship's reinforced hull groaned in protest. "Something's pulling us," Nira whispered. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We're not sinking. We're being drawn." Talon opened his eyes. "She knows we're coming." Outside the viewport, bioluminescent shapes floated past, not fish, not even alien in the Tharkai sense. These were older, forgotten fauna that glowed with impossible patterns, like coded warnings written in the language of nightmares. We reached the threshold, the maximum crush depth for even the hollow-enhanced hull. "Any further, and we're running on borrowed time," Nira said. "Time is all we've ever borrowed," I muttered. Then the beacon flared. A light from the trench below, not natural, not artificial. It spoke. Not in words, but in emotions. Longing, grief, rage. I felt tears on my face and didn't know why. Talon touched the console. The ship responded to him, as if it recognized his authority. We slid downward again, silent and unshaking, into the trench's mouth. That's when we saw her. She floated above a platform of obsidian, a cathedral grown from the bones of the earth itself. Columns of stone and bone stretched upward, surrounding her in a cocoon of silence. Her body was huge, at least 20 feet tall, suspended in a bubble of glowing blue water. Her armor was unlike the others. It looked liquid, flowing even while still. Her face was serene, but beneath that serenity, something dangerous waited. She was beautiful, and she was grieving. "The drowned queen," Talon said, standing. "She's crying," Nira whispered. "She's remembering," he replied. The water around her pulsed. Our instruments spiked. "Wait," Nox said, hand on her weapon. "Something's not right." Talon ignored her. He placed his hand on the hatch lever. "You open that now and we're all crushed like tin cans," Nira warned. He turned, his expression empty. "She's calling us." The door opened. Pressure should have torn us apart, but instead, it welcomed us. Water rushed in, yet it wasn't water. It was thicker, slower, like it had will. It flowed around us, lifting us, protecting us as we stepped into the cathedral trench. Our suits glowed faintly. I could breathe. Somehow this ancient hollow chamber was wrapped in its own logic, a pocket of forgotten science wrapped in myth. We approached slowly. The drowned queen opened her eyes, and every light in the trench went out. Blackness consumed us, not just around, but inside. My thoughts bent sideways. Memories cracked. I felt like I was being unraveled, thread by thread. Then clarity. I stood before her, alone. No ocean, no sub, no war. Just her, a towering figure of grief and rage, and endless, eternal silence. She didn't speak with words. She showed me. I saw Earth's oceans when they were clean, blue and infinite. I saw fleets of hollow ships surfacing from them. I saw the Queen herself rising from the waves, commanding storms, sinking entire enemy moons beneath tsunamis. She was Earth's protector once, and then they betrayed her. Humans. They sealed her down here. Not the Tharkai. Not aliens, us, because she had grown too powerful, because her grief made her unpredictable, because her mind had begun to slip. I fell to my knees in the vision. I felt her pain, her sorrow, her hatred. Then the vision shattered, and I was back in the trench, knees still on the stone, breathing hard. Talon stood before her now. "Queen of the Deep," he said aloud, voice like thunder underwater. "We call you back, not as prisoner, as ally." She blinked, and the sea listened. "Do you remember how I was cast down?" she asked, voice inside our minds. "Do you remember your betrayal?" "We are not them," I said, "but we carry their shame." She drifted downward. Her feet touched the platform. The water rippled in submission. "I will rise," she said, "but not for you." Nox raised her weapon. "Here we go." "I rise for vengeance," the Queen hissed. Then the platform cracked. A massive whirlpool erupted around the trench. We were yanked upward, carried by a force that defied physics. The cathedral imploded behind us. Our suits were dragged through leagues of water in seconds. We didn't swim, we were summoned. When we breached the surface, the sky was no longer dark. It was blood red. The Tharkai had arrived. Thousands of ships blotted the atmosphere. They had begun bombardment. We landed hard on the deck of a mobile fortress floating off the coast of what used to be Japan. Soldiers stared up in horror as the skies fell. Then the sea rose. The drowned queen surfaced like a leviathan, her armor rippling with fury. The water bent around her, waves shaped into claws. She didn't scream. She sang, a song of ruin, of revenge, and the sea obeyed. Monstrous tendrils of water lashed upward, striking ships from the sky. Tharkai vessels twisted and collapsed into black vortices. The queen's wrath was a weapon beyond comprehension. For once, the enemy hesitated, and then they fled. Not all, but many. They ran, because something worse than them had woken. Back at Remnant 9, chaos reigned. 3 Hollow had risen, the Warden, the Red Sigil, the drowned queen, and Earth was no longer prey, but the cost was rising. Each Primarch changed the world around them. Nature bent. Gravity shifted. Earth itself was mutating under their influence. The queen would not return underground. She remained in the ocean, circling the globe like a god watching her shrine. The sigil had vanished, last seen walking alone into a Tharkai-held city. The Warden said nothing, only stood over a growing map of energy patterns the likes of which our scientists couldn't decipher. And Talon? He slept. He hadn't spoken since the trench. He was changing. Inside. So was I. Because when I looked at the Hollow now, I didn't just see weapons. I saw the truth. They weren't humanity's last hope. They were humanity's consequences. And soon, they would collect. The Ashlands were the worst of it. Even before the Tharkai arrived, that part of Earth had already given up. It stretched for thousands of miles across what used to be Eastern Europe and Central Asia. A radioactive scar where nations used to be, where bombs had fallen long before the real war even started. No one claimed responsibility. No one cared anymore. The skies there never cleared. The clouds hung low, thick with dust and radiation, like the Earth had vomited up its regrets and refused to take them back. We called it the Soot Belt, and that's where the 4th Hollow waited. The Warden had given us coordinates, ones not even the command network wanted to see. They argued, debated, delayed, but it didn't matter. By the time the conversation reached the table, we were already en route. Talon hadn't woken since we returned from the trench. His body remained in stasis, inside a sealed chamber, holotech preserving him, feeding his mind with information even we couldn't track. His skin was changing, not in shape, in texture, like it wasn't skin anymore, but memory woven into flesh. Nira checked his vitals every hour, obsessively. Nox had stopped talking altogether. Me? I just kept going forward. Because the moment we stepped out of line, the moment we hesitated, Earth would fall again. The suborbital glide path dropped us hard into the dead zone. The ship didn't even land, it crashed, skimming a ruined factory complex half buried in black glass and ash. We stumbled out into hell. It wasn't just hot, it was hostile. The air buzzed. The soil hissed when you stepped on it. And above us, the sky burned a dull orange like someone had smeared blood across the clouds. "We've got radiation levels in the red," Nira warned, adjusting her suit's shielding protocols. "We stay out here too long, we don't come back." "Define too long," Nox muttered. "Anything over 15 minutes. We had no idea how long it would take to reach the hollow chamber. The Warden's map said it was beneath the crust, an old bunker, pre-collapse, buried after the early wars of unification, but no one had ever seen it. The land was angry, and it didn't want us there. Half a mile in, we passed twisted machines, old war droids fused with melted tanks, like metal had tried to crawl away from its own death. Radiation ghosts blinked in and out of our HUDs, flickers of the past caught in digital echoes. A child laughing, a man screaming, an explosion that never stopped repeating. We reached the crater after 12 minutes. It wasn't a crater anymore. It was a throat, wide, circular, jagged like the earth had opened its mouth and howled. At the bottom, barely visible through the ash and static, was a door. The hollow's mark glowed faintly above it, a circle inside a square. A warning, a signature. "Is that open?" Nira asked. The door was already ajar. Smoke curled from the edges. Heat shimmered upward. Nox pulled her rifle. "Something's been here before us, or something never left," I said. We dropped in. The heat swallowed us whole. The bunker was alive, not with movement but with memory. Its walls were scorched with handprints, not painted, burned in, as if people had tried to claw their way out when the bombs fell, or worse, tried to claw into whatever was inside. The walls pulsed with faint light, firelight, but there was no flame. "This isn't metal," Nira said, running her scanner along the corridor. "It's carbonized bone fused with steel. This entire place is built from corpses." Nox flinched. "Whose idea was that?" "Humans," I said. "During the First Great War, they didn't just bury the hollow here. They sacrificed to it. We reached the central chamber with 2 minutes of radiation shielding left, and there it was, the fourth Primarch, the Ash Tyrant. He sat on a throne of fused matter, bones, steel, concrete, surrounded by ash that never settled. His armor was black-red, pulsing with veins of molten energy. His helmet was crowned with jagged points, like a king forged in hellfire. One hand rested on the armrest. The other held a sword made of something that screamed when you looked at it too long. He wasn't asleep. He was waiting. Nox took a step back. "I don't like this one." "He doesn't care," I said. Talon's voice spoke, not from his body, but through the chamber. "He is not bound by memory. He is not born of sorrow. He was made for conquest, and now he is bored." The Ash Tyrant tilted his head, not slowly but like a puppet reacting to a string pull. His voice cut through the room like a blade. "So the children of Ash return, not to kneel, not to confess, but to ask." Again, I stepped forward, swallowing the dryness in my throat. "We need you." He stood slowly, and the room shook. "You always do. You always will. But need is not debt. What will you offer me this time, child of flesh?" Nira whispered. "He's bartering." "Not bartering," I said. "Testing." The Ash Tyrant pointed his blade at me. "Speak. What price will you pay for my war?" I didn't flinch. "Your rage, your fire, your destruction, all of it can save us, or end us. But you need something too, don't you?" He tilted his head again. "Clever echo. What is it I seek?" I closed my eyes. I didn't know the answer. But something deep inside me, maybe hollow residue, maybe instinct, did. "You want to burn again." He paused, then laughed. The sound was like an inferno given a mouth. "Yes, you finally understand. I was made to destroy. You buried me, and I cooled. I have waited so long to ignite once more." He stepped forward. The heat intensified. "Then give me your war, child. Let me see your skies burn. Let me see your enemies scream. I will light your world on fire again, and it will be glorious." I nodded. Nox muttered. "This one's definitely not a good guy," Nira whispered. "None of them are." We left the chamber in silence, and behind us, the Ash Tyrant followed a walking apocalypse in slow stride. As we emerged from the crater, the air shimmered. A Tharkai dreadnought descended from the sky. We hadn't seen one that close in months. Its cannons charged. The Ash Tyrant didn't move. He looked at the ship, and it caught fire without fuel. Without oxygen, it burned in the sky like it had been cursed. Screams erupted across the comms. Not ours, theirs. And then, silence. The ship fell in 1,000 pieces, each burning brighter than the last. Back at Remnant 9, command fell apart. Too many hollow. Too much power. Too much fear. The generals began arguing again. Command silos shut down. Orders became whispers. Some wanted to put the hollow back to sleep. Others wanted to unleash them fully. Me? I just stood on the tower and watched the sky. Because there was one more signal. One more hollow. Buried in space. On Earth's broken moon, Talon finally woke. He didn't speak. He just looked at me and said, "It's time." The moon hadn't belonged to Earth for decades. We lost it during the early Tharkai sweep, not because they needed it, but because they wanted us to know how helpless we really were. They split it open with a gravity lance, carving deep scars into its crust, leaving entire colonies ruptured like eggs. Now it just hovered there, broken, bleeding dust. A graveyard of past ambition. And somewhere in that graveyard, buried beneath a fortress no longer standing, was the final hollow, the last Primarch, the one not on any record, the one the Warden refused to speak about. Even Sigil, still off-grid somewhere in a Tharkai-blasted city, had gone silent the moment her name came up. The only thing we knew came from Talon, and he didn't say much. "She wasn't made," he said flatly as we prepped the orbital ship. "She was found." No one asked what he meant. Not even Nox. That silence stretched heavy, like we all already knew the answer deep down. Some things weren't created. Some things were just waiting to be discovered. We launched with a crew of 5. No backup. No command authorization. They'd tried to lock us out of the launch systems after the Ash Tyrant annihilated a Tharkai fleet and 2 human command centers that got too close. The Hollow were no longer tools. They were rewriting Earth's order, and they didn't care about the old rules. The Warden stood at the hangar, watching us board. He didn't say goodbye. Just raised a single hand, clenched in a salute older than our species. We left Earth behind in silence, punching through the clouds of the upper atmosphere with nothing but hollow engine propulsion and the weight of destiny on our backs. The moon loomed larger than I remembered. We skimmed past debris, broken satellites, torn ships, bodies frozen in suits that would never breathe again. This place was a memorial, a warning. Nira stared at the readings. No energy spikes. No signs of Tharkai patrols either. "They're afraid of it," Talon said. "Afraid of what?" Nox muttered. "It's the moon. There's nothing left." Exactly. We landed near the breach, a jagged gash in the crust that ran 20 kilometers long, like a sword had split the surface open. The Hollow's signal pulsed from deep inside it. The entrance was unstable. We had to tether ourselves as we crossed open vacuum zones, past what remained of Lunar Station Theta, now a skeletal husk of melted steel and collapsed domes. No sign of life. No sign of death, either. Just emptiness. As we descended, the Hollow signal grew louder. Not in our ears, in our heads. It wasn't a voice. It was breathing. Alive. Slow. Patient. I led the way, shining my light over walls that weren't walls anymore. They were grown, fleshy, fused with moon rock and hollow matter. It was like something had been asleep for so long, the land itself had given up trying to contain it. And then we reached the chamber, a sphere of smooth black stone, embedded within the crust like an egg. We stood at its edge, tethered to the wall, looking down through a translucent shell of energy. She was inside, not suspended, not armored, not anything like the others. She floated in a fetal position, completely still. No armor, no mask, no weapons. Just a woman. Long black hair drifted around her like ink. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, smooth, unblemished, too perfect. Talon knelt. His voice dropped to a whisper. "She who remembers." Nira stared. "That's not a title." "No," he said. "It's a threat." She was the first. The original. Before the Hollow were designed. Before the war. Before Earth even knew it was in danger. They'd found her in the deep black inside an asteroid that wasn't an asteroid. A vessel. A prison. A tomb. And they brought her here. Buried her. Forgot her. But she never forgot them. "She's not like the others," Talon said. "The Warden was a soldier. Sigil was rage. The Queen was loss. The Tyrant was fire. And this one?" Nox asked. Talon looked up. "She's memory." The hollow shell around her cracked. One fracture. Then another. The moment it shattered, my knees buckled. Visions poured into me like a flood. I saw a time before humanity. before Earth. Galaxies torn apart by something that moved through stars like water, planets screaming, civilizations begging the void for mercy, and then I saw her alone in the dark, drifting. She'd watched everything die, and she remembered all of it. Her eyes opened, pure white, no pupils, no iris, just light. The gravity in the chamber inverted. We were yanked toward the shell, only stopped by our tether lines. Nox screamed. Nira's nose bled instantly. And Talon? He spoke words that didn't belong in any human language. Ancient. Impossible. Her head turned toward him, and she smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Then everything stopped. Just stopped. No sound. No light. We weren't on the moon anymore. We stood in a memory, an endless field of dead stars. And she stood in front of us, no longer floating. She wore no armor, but needed none. Her presence alone was enough. "You've come far," she said. Her voice echoed not with sound, but with time. "You've awakened the children. You've broken the seals. We had no choice," I said. "There is always a choice," she whispered, "and always a cost." Talon stepped forward. "Will you fight with us?" She studied him, tilting her head slightly. "You carry the seed, and yet you are not hollow. Then what am I?" "A bridge," she said softly. "A crack in the dam." Her gaze shifted to me. "And you," she said. "You are the key." My mouth went dry. "To what?" "To the end." The stars burned. We snapped back into the chamber, gasping. She was floating still, but now she faced us, eyes open, a halo of light around her body, pulsing like a heartbeat. "I will not fight your war," she said. "I will end it." Nox grabbed my arm. "What does that mean?" Talon closed his eyes. "She's going to erase the Tharkai." "Good," Nox said. "No," he replied. "Not kill, not destroy. Erase, like they never existed." "But that's impossible." She cut in. She raised her hand, and space cracked above her palm. We stared into it, a wound in reality, showing time itself as threads, and she could cut them. "I remember the day they were born," she said. "I remember the mistake that let them live. You're going to kill them before they ever existed," I whispered. She nodded, and in doing so, unravel everything they've touched. Every war, every death, every moment they influenced. "Wait," Nira said. "If they never existed, that means this war never happened. And the Hollow never needed to rise," I added. Talon said nothing. We all looked at each other. Nox whispered, "Would we remember?" "No," I said. And then the real question hit us. If she erased the Tharkai, would we still exist? The Queen, the Tyrant, even the Warden, all born from war. Even Talon, even me. "What will remain?" I asked. She looked away. "That is not for me to decide. I am memory, not future. But you'll do it anyway?" She didn't answer. She simply turned, drifting upward through the broken shell. We returned to Earth in silence. Her light followed us like a second sun, and the sky changed. All around the globe, hollow activity ceased. The Queen retreated to the deep. The Tyrant sat once more on his burning throne. Sigil appeared on every screen, her smile as sharp as ever. And the Warden? He met us at Remnant 9. He looked at her, the final hollow, and knelt. "She who remembers," he said. "Do what you must." She closed her eyes, and the world held its breath. The world had gone quiet. Not in the way it had when the bombs fell, or when the Tharkai first carved the moon. That silence had been fear. Death. The kind that sat in your chest and refused to move. This silence was worse. It was expectant. Like the Earth knew something was coming that couldn't be stopped, and didn't know whether to grieve or hope. She who remembers hovered above the sky now. She didn't float. She didn't fly. She simply existed above us, a second moon of light and shadow, her presence visible even during the day. Not everyone could see her the same way. Some saw a woman, some saw a child. Others saw a burning star in the shape of a human. I saw her for what she was, an ending wearing the skin of a savior. And the people below, they began to forget. First, It was small. Soldiers forgot where they were stationed. Scientists forgot passcodes. Children forgot their names. Then the bigger things came. Wounds vanished. Graves emptied. Pictures dissolved. Whole cities woke up with no memory of the war because in the version of history now unraveling, it never happened. She was already editing. I stood at the edge of Remnant 9's outer ring, watching the sky flicker. Clouds blinked in and out of place. The sun stuttered like a dying light bulb. Mountains shifted. Time is cracking, Nira said softly beside me. Her voice was tired, hollow. She's not just cutting the Tharkai out, she continued. She's cutting out everything they touched. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. Behind us, the warden stood like a statue. He hadn't moved in hours. The ash tyrant was burning quietly in the mountains, holding still like a volcano waiting for a reason to erupt. The drowned queen circled the globe beneath the sea, her emotions pulling the tides out of rhythm. Even Sigil, the chaos-born, had gone quiet, and Talon hadn't spoken since we returned from the moon. He sat inside the hollow chamber below the command center, hooked to every data line we had. His heartbeat was syncing with the hollow grid. His DNA was mutating. His thoughts were no longer his own. Some said he was merging with the hollow codebase. Some said he was being replaced. All I knew was this. If we were going to stop her or at least understand what she was doing, we needed Talon back. So I went down. The chamber was cold, not in temperature and atmosphere. Like it had been emptied of all emotion, like grief had come and gone and left the air hollow. Talon sat in the center, surrounded by pulsing threads of light. They fed into him, through his spine, his skull, his chest. His eyes were open. White. Not glowing, just white. Talon, I said. He didn't move. I stepped closer. Talon, it's happening. The unraveling. She started. Still nothing. So I sat in front of him and whispered the first thing that came to mind. Do you remember the girl from the trench? The one we pulled out of the wreck near Station Kilo 2. His lips twitched. She kept humming. Couldn't talk, but she hummed. You said it was the last song your mother taught you before she died. You cried when she hummed it again. His breathing changed. You said if Earth ever burned, you'd find a way to rebuild it. His eyes flickered. Talon, if she erases them, she erases you. All of this. We don't come back. We don't even exist. I know. The voice was a whisper, his lips barely moved. You're in there. I never left, he said. He blinked once, and the lights shut off. We emerged from the hollow chamber together, and something shifted immediately. The warden looked at him and stepped back, a gesture of respect. The queen surfaced, just for a moment, then vanished beneath the waves. The tyrant bowed his head. Sigil laughed softly from a static-filled transmission. So, the boy woke up. Wonder if it'll matter. And then she who remembers spoke. He is not enough. Her voice echoed across the world. Every screen, every speaker, every thought. Talon looked up. Then tell me what is. You are seed, not root. You cannot grow what was never planted. Then plant it, he said. Tell me what you want. I want what was stolen, she said. I want before. And if we give it to you? She was silent for a long time. Then she said, then I will choose. We gathered the hollow, all of them. Each one stood on a different continent, connected by light, a global convergence. It wasn't us who brought them, it was her. We were just witnesses. I watched from the command tower. Nox stood beside me, arms crossed, lips tight. This is it, huh? I nodded. Nira adjusted her holofeed. The hollow grid is syncing. Everything is pointing to one central node. Talon stepped forward. She's going to rewrite the timeline, he said. Not just delete the Tharkai, but choose a different thread. One where none of this happened. And us? I asked. Maybe we're part of it. Maybe we're not. She hasn't decided. Then we still have time to convince her. Talon looked at me, pain in his face. No, he said. We have time to let go. He walked to the center of the convergence point, the hollow grid shining around him. The sky above rippled with light and memory, and she descended, not like a god, like a story ending. She touched the ground, barefoot, human-shaped, eyes full of centuries, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. "You are ready," she said. Talon nodded. "I am. You know the price?" "I do." I stepped forward. "What price?" She turned to me. "If I rewrite the thread, I must leave something behind to carry the memory, to hold the echo, or the fabric of reality will tear again." "You need an anchor," I said. She nodded. And Talon, brave, broken, brilliant, Talon took one step forward. "I'll be the anchor," he said. "No," I whispered. "You'll die." "Worse," she said. "He will remember. When no one else does." Talon smiled. "I've carried worse." The hollow began to fade, their energy flowing into the sky. The queen dissolved into mist. The tyrant turned to ash. Sigil winked at me through the screen, then vanished in static. The warden gave one last nod and was gone. Talon knelt before her. "I'm ready," he said. And then, the light exploded. I woke in a room I didn't recognize. Clean, white. Windows that showed a peaceful earth. Birds, sky. No ash, no war. I stood slowly, heart pounding. No hollow. No Tharkai. Just peace. Nira passed me in the hallway. She smiled, didn't know me. Knox walked by, joking with a technician. None of it had happened. Except me. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw him. Talon. Not beside me. Inside me. And I remembered. Because I was the second anchor. The world was clean. It smelled of grass, of new rain, of cities untouched by war. It sounded like laughter in playgrounds, quiet conversations on park benches, the rhythmic hiss of trains moving on time. The skies were a soft blue, dotted with white clouds that drifted like they had nothing to flee from. And no one remembered. Not the Tharkai, not the hollow, not the ash-choked cities or blood-drenched trenches, not the broken moon or the burning seas, not the fire or the silence or the slow, grinding crawl of extinction. It was like it had never happened, because, in this version of history, it hadn't. But I did. I remembered everything. At first, I thought it was a dream. I tried to shake it, the war, the vaults, the gods we called upon. I told myself it was trauma, or some embedded simulation, maybe a bleed-through from another life. But I couldn't ignore the signs. The scar across my chest that had never been inflicted, the fragments of code on my datapad hollow script that shouldn't exist in this world, and the voice, his voice, Talon's, always soft, always in the back of my mind, like a whisper caught between static. "You were the last thread, the piece I couldn't cut." The echo she left intact. I didn't understand what that meant. Not at first, until I met her. She was a child this time. I found her standing at the edge of a lake, throwing pebbles, barefoot, smiling, same eyes, same stillness. I walked slowly, every step feeling like betrayal. She turned before I even spoke. "You remember," she said. "Yes." She tossed another pebble. "It's strange, isn't it? To be the only one who knows the song, while the world hums a different tune." "You made the right call," I said. "You saved them." "I didn't save them," she said. "They were already gone. I saved the idea of them. A world without teeth." She looked up at me. "But not you. You're still sharp." I swallowed. Talon chose to remember. "Why am I still?" "Because he left a part of himself in you. A memory, a tether, a kindness." She crouched down, ran her hand through the lake water. "But even kindness has a cost." I began to see them, slowly. Cracks, reflections that didn't match. People with faces I remembered dying. Places that had been war zones now spotless and wrong. Shadows of buildings that never should have been. The hollow weren't in this world, not physically. But they echoed. The warden, in the sudden silence, before a storm. The queen, in the deep tremble of waves that struck too hard for physics to explain. The tyrant, in flickers of fire that never left soot. And Sigil laughed through static on broken radios and cracked mirrors. They were remnants, not of form, of presence, and they were growing stronger. I confronted her again at the edge of a ruined cathedral, except it wasn't ruined anymore. It had never been bombed. And yet, I saw the blood that never stained the steps, heard the gunfire that never echoed through its halls. She stood at the altar, fingers brushing a candle's flame. "You can't hold it together forever," I said. She didn't turn. "I never planned to." "Then why?" She turned slowly. "Because they asked me to. You, Talon, all of you. You said you wanted peace. So I gave it. At the cost of reality? At the cost of truth," she said. That night, I dreamed of Talon, but this time, he wasn't whole. He was standing in a black room, a windowless void with only dust and data for company. His face was older. His eyes no longer shone with hollow light, just exhaustion. "I'm breaking," he said. "You're the anchor." "Anchors rust." I reached out. Couldn't touch him. "What do I do?" "Decide," he said. "You remember. So you decide." I woke up in a world that no longer wanted me. I looked at strangers with names I used to know. I passed buildings I watched burn. I heard laughter in streets that had once run red, and I knew it couldn't hold. Reality was beginning to fray. The choice came quietly. No explosions, no visions, just a door. In a house that hadn't been there the day before. I walked in. She sat at the table. Still a child. Legs swinging, a cup of tea untouched. She smiled. "It's time, isn't it?" "Yes." "Will you end it?" she asked. "Undo the dream." "I don't know." She leaned back. "If you erase the rewrite, the Tharkai return. The war begins again. Humanity dies, slowly. The hollow rise once more. You've seen it. You lived it. And if I let this continue, the dream collapses. The echoes eat through reality. Time buckles. Physics fails. We all fade." I sat down across from her. "What about a third option?" Her eyes sparkled. "Now you're thinking like a hollow." The third option was madness. But it was the only way. Not erasing the war. Not preserving the dream, but binding the memory. Creating a shell around the truth, locking it inside the minds of a chosen few. Letting the world remain in peace, but giving the hollow their due. Their story, their sacrifice, their war. A memory preserved not in time but in tale. A legend. I would become the first. A storyteller. And I would tell the truth. Again and again. Even if no one believed me. Even if it felt like fiction. Because memory is the one enemy time can never conquer. And so I began. I told them of the warden, the still guardian who woke with purpose and fury. Of the red sigil, the blade in the storm, all fire and laughter and blood. Of the drowned queen, whose tears could flood armies. Of the ash tyrant, the king of fire, who demanded nothing but war. Of she who remembers the first and the last, who carried the weight of every star that ever died. And of Talon, the one who carried the seed, and chose to remember so the rest could forget. I told them in secret rooms. To children who couldn't sleep. To soldiers who felt ghosts in their dreams. To historians who looked at clean archives and felt the lies underneath. Sometimes, they called me mad. Sometimes, they cried. Sometimes, they remembered just for a moment before the dream smoothed over the cracks. But it was enough, because memory spreads. And one day, someone else will pick up the thread. And they will tell the story again. This was never about winning the war. It was about not forgetting we fought it. Because the moment we forget, the Tharkai return, and we call upon the Ancient Ones once more.